Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
Oh,
Whoa.
whoa,
Whoa.
whoa,
Whoa.
whoa,
Whoa.
what, whoa.
Whoa. Hello and welcome to the Real World. My name is Cameron. I'm your host today on the Real World Podcast, episode 41 of the Real World Podcast. We're going to be talking all about our top five Keanu Reeves movies. All right, well, we're going to jump into this episode of the Real World Podcast, as always, with my co-host, Bert. How you doing, man?
Awesome, dude. How you doing?
Doing great. This is going to be a really fun episode. As we usually do, before we get into Keanu and his top five or top five Keanu Reeves movies, we're going to talk about some movie news. Here we go. All right, folks, we're going to jump in now with some movie news. There was quite a bit of news that dropped this week, so we want to keep you all informed as we usually do here in the podcast. So, first thing that I'm really excited about, I know you'll be excited about this too, Bert, because you're a fan of this guy. The next film by Jordan Peele has now
Oh,
been set for a release date. We don't have a title, we don't know much about the movie, but it will be released on Christmas Day 2024. So
mm,
next Christmas, we will get our next Jordan Peele. I'm guessing it's a horror thriller of some kind. I don't know if it's going to be set around Christmas. I mean, they're releasing it on
right.
Christmas Day, so that's interesting. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Dude's 3 for 3. I can't wait for the next one.
Right. Hopefully 4 for 4 after this
He's
one.
he's become kind of like I feel like he's kind of like M. Night, the way
Yeah.
he's sort of creating his own projects, and they've
Right.
all been really good or surprisingly good, right out the
Yeah.
gate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all original screenplays,
Hmm.
unique
Love it.
ideas.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him, and his
Hmm.
movies just keep getting bigger. As he gets bigger
Yeah.
budgets,
Right.
each one of his movies has done really well, and he's got a fan base now that looks forward to his movies. So yeah, I'm very excited. It is set to debut the same month as Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and
Oh.
his major competition will be Avatar 3. So
Oh
that will
yeah.
be
Yeah.
interesting. They're not releasing the same week. I think Avatar's a week before or 2 weeks before, but he'll have some competition there. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up shaking out box office wise.
Yeah, and his movie will be half the runtime of Avatar 3, so they're
Right.
they're not exactly the same.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, looking forward to that. A bit of a shakeup over at Marvel this week. Victoria Alonso has been let go from her position. She was the president of physical production, post-production, visual effects, and animation. So she played a big role there. She was at the studio for about 17 years, so a very long time. She's been
Oh,
at Marvel. So this is a pretty big shakeup. The decision was made by Human Relations, Disney's legal team, and multiple executives, including Disney Entertainment co-chairman Alan Bergman, to whom Marvel Studios directly reports. So a lot of people involved in this decision. It was not a decision that they took lightly. There are several reasons for this that have been reported on. One of them being a breach of contract due to her involvement with Argentina 1985, which was nominated for an Oscar. And supposedly there was something where she was not allowed to be involved with a production because of her role. Some kind of breach of contract happened there. So that was given as one
hmm.
reason. Other people there's rumors about other reasons potentially that there was poor treatment of the visual effects artists that worked for
Hmm.
Marvel. And we've heard rumblings of this in the past couple years about how these visual effects houses that they kind of hire, they're kind of unrelenting with the overtime these guys have to work, the changing deadlines that they have to deal with, the understaffing that
Yeah.
they're dealing with. So, and it makes a lot of sense because you look back at 2021 and 2022, there were 17 projects released by Marvel, 7 movies, 8 series, 2 specials, and only 23 months. So it's kind
Wow.
of crazy what these visual effects artists have to deal with. Even though they hire out multiple effects houses, these guys are still very, very overworked.
Hmm.
And some people have come out online, and people that work for these effects houses and have talked about this. And so, whether she was the main problem or not, it seems like that's what Disney seems to think. If
Hmm.
these reports are true,
Oh,
so interesting shakeup. It's an issue that's been again talked about for the past couple years, with specifically with Marvel. And so, hopefully this does change things for the better, because look, I mean, I see the dip in quality. I mean, you and I have talked about it a little bit before, even with something as recent as Ant-Man, which we both enjoyed. But there's
yeah,
certain issues with effects, how they keep it kind of dark, and they do certain things. That movie's got a lot of effects in it, right? I mean, pretty
yeah,
much every
yeah,
shot is an
right,
effect shot. And there's, varying quality in there. There's some shots
sure,
that look great, and there's others that, don't look quite as good. So hopefully
yeah,
this will change that and make it more consistent. We talk about all the time, there needs to be a better blend of practical and digital together. That's really
yeah,
where effects work best, going back to the first Iron
yep.
Man that does that so well. So this is
Hmm.
just an interesting kind of conversation I wanted to bring up because it is in the news right now.
Yeah, it's a very good conversation to have because as consumers, we're just looking for the art that comes out of it,
Right.
and I'm sure there are people in the studios that couldn't care less about that. All they're looking at is the numbers because these are corporations
Right.
there's big money at stake.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know corporations, they're gonna every month that goes by, they're gonna try to tighten the screws a little bit.
Yep.
And meanwhile, these artists are they're probably very well paid, but they're thinking I could go anywhere and do this, so I'm not going to
Right.
put up with this garbage.
Yeah.
And I'd love to be a kind of a fly on the wall and see some of that behind the scenes stuff that we'll
Right.
probably never hear
Right.
about. But
Yeah.
it's not a great trend, and I think
Yeah.
ultimately the movies will show um, degradation of the quality if
Yeah.
that continues. And
Right.
it's a shame because there's been such good work over across the 30 plus movies
Sure. Sure.
that I'd really hate to see the quality go downhill. But yeah,
Yeah.
Ant-Man did. I thought it succeeded very well, and I was blown away by
Yeah.
the artistry in it. But
Right.
it's sad to hear that that stuff's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we'll see who ends up taking her place. That's going to be a big
Mhm.
role to fill there. If they'll maybe break that into several different people. It sounds like she was in charge of a lot. So maybe they need to, fill some different roles and have that position be a several different people, helping with that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening in the future there. Another thing I wanted to talk about, a new movie, although not really a new movie, it's actually a remake of one of my favorite Alfred Hitchcock films, Vertigo, is in the
Mhm.
works with Robert Downey Jr.,
Oh,
set to fill the Jimmy Stewart role. So that's an interesting idea.
hmm.
We talk about remakes on here sometimes. A lot of the Disney ones I'm not a fan of. I feel like they're too much of the same. With something like Vertigo, something that's kind of iconic, from such a iconic filmmaker like Alfred Hitchcock, it's interesting to see what they're going to do with this. How different is it going to be? Robert Downey Jr. in the role, I'm interested, obviously, an actor I really like. Stephen Knight is penning the script. He's written some really interesting movies and shows over the years. So, yeah, I'm just curious about this more than anything, because, like I said, I obviously own the original here and I've seen it a couple times, and I like it a lot. I think it's a really interesting movie, has an interesting kind of concept, and so yeah, I'm curious about it, but yeah, that is set to start filming later this year.
I start any movie with Robert Downey, and you're going to be probably in good shape,
Right.
especially at this point. I
Yeah.
don't think I've seen the original Vertigo. I've seen a few of those, like Rear Window and some others,
Sure.
but I've kind of always wanted to watch it. But
Yeah.
that'd definitely be a reason to go back and watch to compare.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Speaking of Stephen Knight, who's writing that movie, he is also signed on with Lucasfilm to write the next Star Wars movie. So this next Star Wars
Oh,
movie, they've actually been prepping it for a while. They had
mm.
a writer on board, Damon Lindelof, who many people know from he co-ran Lost when that show was on.
Oh,
He's helped co-write on the newer Star Trek movies as well. So he's
mm.
kind of done a few different things. The Leftovers, I think, was a show he did. I never watched that, but interesting writer. I really like him. Really smart guy, but he left the movie recently. He left about 2 weeks ago. So he was writing on it for a few months, and I don't know if it was creative differences or whatever reason he
Oh,
left. Now they've
right.
got Stephen Knight in, and Stephen Knight, he's been around for quite a while. He's a British writer. He's done shows like Peaky Blinders,
Hmm.
the new show Taboo with Tom Hardy, the series C on Apple TV Plus with Jason Momoa. He's also directed a couple movies. One of them is Locke with Tom Hardy, which is, I'm a huge fan of. This whole movie takes place in a car. The whole
Oh,
movie is
really?
you're in a car with Tom Hardy. He's on the phone the whole movie, and it's really engaging and
Like
interesting.
phone
So,
booth, right? I like
right,
those
it
kind of
kind of like
things
phone
though.
booth.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. So he did a
Huh.
great job with that project. He did a
Okay.
really interesting movie called Serenity with Matthew McConaughey. Did you ever watch that? And Anne
I'm not.
Hathaway.
No, that's a. Aren't isn't there another movie called Serenity that's not
There's the sci-fi one, which is
that?
based on the Firefly show that
That one
Joss
I've
Whedon did.
seen. That one I've
Right.
seen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one's fun. This one's totally
Not
different. It came out
okay.
just in 2019.
Oh, okay.
Interesting movie. I
Really?
really,
Okay.
I still don't really know what I think about it. They make some really off the wall choices. It's
Oh,
got
really?
several twists in it that you just don't see
Huh.
coming. So it would be worth watching, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's done
So,
that. He's been the writer on movies like Seventh Son, Burnt with Bradley Cooper, and one of my favorites, Amazing Grace, which is about the true story of the writing of the song Amazing Grace. So
oh.
he's been writing movies for a long time.
Hmm.
He's a really good writer. Like I said, I think he's even a good director, but they already have a director. Her name is Charmine Obaid Chinoy. She directed some of the episodes of Miss Marvel for Disney Plus, that Disney Plus series. So they've got her set to direct. Now they've got this new writer on. I'm really hoping this comes together. It sounds like Lucasfilm, obviously, they want to make the movie, even though the writer left, they've got a new writer on. So they must have a cool idea that they think will get fans excited. So, yeah, I'm excited to see Star Wars back on the big screen. The fact that they've got this creative team now is exciting to me as well. So we'll just have to see how it turns out.
Yeah, so no idea if this is like where in the universe this falls or anything like that.
Yeah, no details on it. Some say it.
Gotcha.
There's rumors that it might be after Episode 9, so we might be
Okay.
going further into
Okay.
the future, past the
Gotcha.
movies. So
Hmm.
it could be in there. That the Star Wars timeline is so vast; it could be anywhere. We don't really
Gotcha.
know yet.
Okay.
Another new movie coming up soon, based on some intellectual property, based on a video game, actually, is Ghosts of Tsushima. This is a video game that came out just a couple years ago. My brother
Yeah.
played it, really
Oh,
liked it. It's a samurai game, basically in feudal
okay.
Japan. You're a samurai
Huh.
wandering through, the kind of countryside of Japan. So it's got a great look to it. People talk about the story a lot, how it feels like you're playing a movie, kind of, one of those types of games. And Chad Stahelski, who is the director of the John Wick franchise, he's directed all those movies. He is on board as director,
Mm,
and so it looks like they'll start shooting
cool.
that next. That's his next project. So,
Okay.
really curious to see what ends up becoming of that. Again, I don't know much about it. I've never played it.
Yeah, me either.
One thing that was interesting is that the game actually has what they call a Kurosawa version, reference
Oh.
to Akira Kurosawa, and you can
Hmm.
play the whole game in black and white. So that's unique.
Interesting.
And so he's
Wow.
actually talking with the studio about releasing a black and white version of the film as well, which
Okay.
would be fun, for fans like me who like old cinema, that kind of classic feel. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's also interesting. An interesting element to this. It's a little makes it unique. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing what he does with that, and how his kind of sensibilities with the John Wick movies fit in with that kind of period piece. That'll be a little bit different.
Yeah. It's always a challenge when it's a movie based on a video game.
I know there's not many good ones. Speaking of John Wick, staying in that world for a moment, there is a series coming out, based on the Continental. So this hotel that is featured heavily in all the John Wick
Hmm.
films. There's these Continental hotels all over the world that these assassins can go to, and they're making a show about it. They're making a show about the one in New York City. It all takes place in the 1970s, so it's a prequel,
Hmm.
and it'll cover Ian McShane's character Winston and Lance
Uh-huh.
Reddick's character Sharon in that hotel as they're kind of, first coming on board and, building this hotel up into, what it
Okay.
later becomes known as in the movie. So a lot of interesting things they could play with there,
Hmm.
obviously. John Wick, probably won't be in it. He'll be too young. But there
Yeah.
could be all kinds of other characters that we see in the movies come in and play around there. So I'm curious about it. It will stream this September. So they've already shot
Hmm.
most of the show. It will consist of three 90-minute episodes. So kind of like three little movies we'll basically be
Okay.
getting. It's a limited series, you know. And so yeah, all of that excites me. I prefer longer, shorter seasons, you know, longer episodes
Mm,
with shorter episodes. I prefer that rather than,
sure.
20 episodes and, 20 minutes each or whatever, you know. But
Yeah.
I think this is going to fit really well and be an interesting way to expand on this mythology that the John Wick movies kind of, that's what's interesting about them is they kind of build their mythology in the background. You know, you don't really
Yeah.
get a ton
Yeah.
of information. It's all kind of just there for you to figure out, which I
Yeah.
like. So yeah, I'm really excited to watch that show.
Yeah. So it sounds like if it's a younger version of the concierge, Lance Reddick's character,
Right.
I wonder if before he passed away he had any involvement in it. That would be neat to see if he did. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
if they did or not. I know that well, we can also talk about Ballerina, which is another spin-off of John Wick that they're making that they already
Oh,
shot. Actually, it's set to come out, I think, early next year, with Ana de Armas. She's going to play the title character, the ballerina, who
okay.
we see a glimpse of in John Wick 3. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same character or one of those
Mm-hmm.
types of
Okay.
characters that we see there. But they did cameo in that. But that movie takes place
Okay.
between John Wick 3 and 4.
Really? Okay.
But they did cameo in that. I think Keanu Reeves shot a cameo for that as well to kind of
Oh,
just show you how it connects to the rest of the movies, that kind of
cool.
thing. So, yeah, I know they're both Ian McShane and Lance Reddick were involved in that.
Oh,
So I don't know if
okay.
that's going to tie into the show or not either, how it's
Mm-hmm.
all going to, end up connecting. But yeah, that's what they have
Cool.
planned. All right. Well, speaking of John Wick, obviously this is the big movie that came out this past weekend. So wanted to talk a little bit about box office. I'm always curious about this and see how each movie compares to the last, especially with a franchise like this. It's been going on almost 10 years. And so, four movies over, about 9 years now that they've been doing these. So I wanted to kind of look at each one and compare, and it's really interesting when you look at these. So, um, John Wick 4, which was just released, it had a $8 million opening night, which is the biggest opening night for any John Wick film. So 8 million on Thursday night previews alone.
Okay. Yeah.
Opening day, 29 million. So a huge opening day for John Wick. Shazam made that in its opening weekend. So it's doing really well. It's projected for, I think, 70 million over the
Mm.
weekend, which is a big opening. It'll be the biggest opening ever for the series. Looking back at John Wick 1, I like to look at the budget compared to the gross,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's kind of how
Right.
you tell how successful a movie is financially,
Absolutely.
at least. And so the budget of John Wick 1, only 25 million. Very low budget on that first John Wick movie.
Yeah.
And it ended up grossing 86. So it made quite a bit of money,
Wow.
enough to, obviously warrant a sequel.
Mm.
John Wick 2 comes out. They give it a bigger budget. They gave it $40 million for the budget. Ended up grossing 171 million for the sequel, which is
We got a
incredible.
franchise.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like, all right, let's get number three going. So
Yeah. Yeah.
number three, again, bigger budget. This time, $75 million budget. So pretty substantial, almost to that $100 million budget. $75 million budget grossed $327 million, which is amazing.
Wow.
These are some of the most profitable movies of recent, years. So now
Yeah.
that brings us to the fourth film. Now they get their $100 million budget. Okay, so biggest budget yet, $100 million to pour into this thing, and the gross again already is 70 million, which is incredible in opening weekend. So they've already almost made their money back in one weekend. So just
Yeah.
a great, like, that's what every studio wants to see, and obviously it
Mhm.
the filmmakers, I'm sure it boosts morale, and it's why they've made four of these, right? I mean, because they keep making more money, people get more interested in them and more invested. So yeah, really good to see that kind of trend with any franchise, which is really cool. So, and they've had the same director the whole way through. Obviously, Keanu has played the role the whole way through. They've had the same writer too. Derek Kolstad has written all four films, and Tyler Bates has been the composer for all of them as well. So, really cool franchise. I'm big into, and we'll get into our review of all the movies in just a moment. But before we leave our movie news segment, I wanted to talk quickly about two anniversaries. One of them is another of these Alfred Hitchcock films. It is The Birds. The Birds turned 60 this week. It was released March 28th, 1963. I think this is a fantastic horror movie. It's kind of one of these really great thriller just ideas of, you know, what Jaws did for sharks, this did for birds, basically. So
Right.
it's really enjoyable. I really like this movie a lot. It is I feel like it's a little long. It gets has some pacing issues a little bit, but the end, the final act is fantastic and really great. I mean, you know, groundbreaking effects work. I mean, Hitchcock doesn't get enough credit for being like a guy at the forefront of special effects, but he really does some incredible effects work there. So had to mention that one. The other one I wanted to mention was The Outsiders. So this is a movie released March 25th, 1983. It has a kind of like who's who of Hollywood here. You got Tom Cruise, you got Patrick Swayze, Diane Lane is in this, Ralph Macchio, Rob Lowe, C. Thomas Howell, Emilio Estevez. So just a great cast of young actors. I mean, this is some of their first film that they were in, many of them, and just tells a great story. It's Francis Ford Coppola, you know, who's known for The Godfather and Apocalypse Now,
Yeah.
all these great classic films. So he does a great job with this. Really, really great story. This Blu-ray it's called the complete novel because it's the extended kind of director's cut, basically, of the movie that was released years after the original. And so, yeah, I really enjoy The Outsiders. It's one I've seen a couple of times. My dad showed it to me. It's one of his favorites as well. So, if you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. All right, well, the big movie that's out this weekend, as we've been discussing already in our movie news segment, is John Wick Chapter 4. This is now in theaters. It is the fourth installment of the John Wick franchise, which has been going on since 2014. So quite a while. And of course, it stars Keanu Reeves. That's why we're talking about him and ranking our top 5 Keanu Reeves movies this week on the podcast. So just wanted to briefly go through and kind of give an overview of our thoughts on this franchise. It's kind of changed the game, and it's certainly in the realm of action cinema. I mean, it is really everyone's kind of aiming for this now. Everyone's like, hey, let's get those John Wick guys to do our action sequences, you know, because these guys were stunt guys, right? Chad Stahelski, who directed all the John Wick films, he co-directed the first one with David Leitch, who's gone on to do Deadpool 2, Bullet Train, Atomic Blonde, all these other great action movies. So they co-directed the first one, even though there was some like DGA rule where only one of them could be credited. So Leitch actually only has a producing credit and Stahelski has a directing credit, but they were both on set every day directing. So really interesting. You know, they come from the stunt world. They've been stunt guys for years in Hollywood. Stahelski was Reeves' stunt double on the Matrix films, the whole trilogy. He did all of his stunt work. So they learned a lot on those, you know, Matrix movies. They kind of credit Matrix with their careers and what the Wachowskis did with that. And then, of course, you know, Keanu was always interested in doing his own stunts. And so that's kind of taken over this kind of John Wick thing, is like it's Keanu's franchise because he's doing his own stunts and it's all in camera. There's not a lot of CGI. It's just very unique from like where a lot of action movies were going, especially in like, you know, early 2000s. They were kind of starting to go more CGI. There was a lot of shaky cam, a lot of quick edits, you know, and cuts like that. So action filmmaking was kind of going a direction. And then John Wick kind of was like, the stunt guys were like, you can tell that's not the actor. We want to show you it's the actor and it's the stunt guys doing the stunts, you know, and it's all grounded in reality and that kind of thing. So the first John Wick movie just kind of opened up the gates. It kind of, you know, again, it kind of changed the game. They created their own fight choreography called Gun Fu, which is, you know, him using his gun and fighting with it. And it's just very different. It's very inventive. It's very unique. It doesn't really feel like anything else out there, although there's now been imitators of it since they've started to come out. But look, I'm a huge fan of the first film. It's very simple. That's one thing I like about these movies. Really, they get more complex as they go, but the first one is very simple. It's, you know, a revenge story, right? It's inspired by, you know, these guys are big into kind of urban mythology, got graphic novels, comic books, that kind of thing. So it has this, you know, it has a kind of a heightened reality to it, especially as the movies go on. I feel like they kind of earn their more like heightened sense of reality it's this world of assassins that, doesn't really
Hmm.
exist. But again, world building that I really like. Again, it's not at the forefront, it's kind of in the background. It's kind of, you have to figure it out. How does all this work? These gold coins and like all these things that they have their own way of talking, and these kind of things. So just a really intriguing kind of mythology that they've built across the movies. But yeah, the first one, again, simple story, simply shot. A lot of, again, they're not really close into the action. They're not doing a lot of takes. It's kind of sitting back, letting the action unfold on screen. You can clearly see what's going on. That kind of stuff is what I like about it. That is different from a lot of other action movies. The cast is great here. Of course, Reeves, this is a great role for him. I feel like it plays to all his strengths as an actor, right? He's kind of quiet. He's
Hmm.
collected. He knows what he's doing. He's very
Yeah.
intelligent. And he's very sympathetic as well. That's a key to this character that I think,
Right.
he's probably the deadliest character in movies history. He kills like 200 people across these movies, but you still like him. You still root for him, because of
Right.
what happened to him. And there's this kind of softer side to him that you don't get with a lot of action heroes. I feel like,
Right.
this connection with his wife, and of course the dog, plays a big role in it as well. So, they just make you like him up front. The first, like, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes of this movie is no action. It's just us getting to know him and his
Hmm.
daily routine and what he's gone through recently. And then slowly the character is kind of revealed throughout the film. So really like him in the role. Willem Dafoe in this first movie, I think he's great, as always. Ian McShane, is kind of this interesting character we don't know much about at first. Lance Reddick, as we mentioned, the concierge is great in his small role. John Leguizamo shows up, who I really like, and he has a lot of
Yeah.
fun in
Yeah.
this as well. Adrian Palicki, who is Perkins, kind of this rival assassin in the first movie. Then Alfie Allen plays Yosef, and he's the guy who kind of instigates this whole thing, this young Russian mobster's son, who's just got one of those very punchable faces. You just can't wait for this guy to die the whole movie. um, so he plays that role really well. Michael Nyquist, who plays his father, he's kind of the big Russian gangster. He does a great job as a bad guy. Bridget Moynihan as John Wick's wife, really like her and her, kind of flashback sequences. She does a good job. And we get a nice cameo here by the Keymaker from the Matrix movies. His name is Randall Du Kim, and he plays this kind of this is like doctor character basically who helps John Wick out. So really great cast, pretty small cast, not a huge ensemble movie really. Some of them only have a few minutes of screen time. So just again, I love how they keep things simple here. It's elegant. It's very, very well shot. Really huge fan of the cinematography in all these movies. The lighting. There's a nightclub sequence that just looks excellent. Really, all the whole movie. The way they use shadow and light. It's just so well done that I feel like in a lot of action movies it can be a little flat. Here it really has dimension to it and just looks interesting. So, just again, it's simple and it's elegant. That's kind of the words I would use to kind of sum up this film. Of course, the gun fu and all the action sequences are so well thought out and planned and shot that yeah, I just have a blast watching this movie. It's really really good. Good music again. Tyler Bates does the score there, and so yeah, it was kind of a cult sleeper hit. Not a lot of people thought it would be a big hit, and ended up doing a lot better than people thought it would. And strong word of mouth, got out about it, and it was one I avoided. I didn't see any John Wick movies until I heard the third one was coming out.
Hmm.
And I, rented the first two and watched them and then went and saw the third one in the theater all in one weekend. So, I kind of came to the game a little bit late, but yeah, I'm a massive fan. And I think it's because this first movie really draws you in a good way.
Hmm.
So, what are your thoughts on the first John Wick?
I like what you said that it kind of is. I mean, it's kind of creating its own category,
Yeah,
this type of action movie, and I like it.
right.
I like the direction that it's going. We all know the CGI is there if they need it, but there's way too much reliance on it. I feel like
Yes.
overall, and so I love these scenes that are put together with just the stunts. I like to be impressed by that stuff first and
Yeah.
foremost.
Right.
I hadn't seen any of these until just recently, and I watched all three. I'm not as big of a fan as these as you are, but I do
Okay.
like all of them.
Okay.
It is a bit jarring to watch John Wick, and he's in his, you understand why he's doing the assassinating and that kind of thing,
Right.
but it's just kind of jarring to see him at point blank range take out so many people.
Right.
That's a lot. You know,
Yeah.
it's obviously probably a pretty heavy R, I would
Yeah,
think, rating.
definitely. Right.
Sometimes he's kind of like the Terminator, you know, in that
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
And then there's a few times where I feel like he maybe is just a little bit too omniscient about where the guy's coming from around the corner, and he just
Gotcha.
happens to turn
Right.
right then and take him
Okay.
out.
Right.
But that's, I don't really want to knock it, because I'm just so impressed with what they do with the stunts.
Yeah.
And most everybody likes Keanu, and people want to see him do this kind of role,
Right.
because he doesn't, going back to the 90s and what in even I guess the 80s, and how he started out, he's just such an unlikely guy to have ended up where he is.
Right.
And then on top of that, you got a lot of people that are, let's just say, not quite so youthful, and they want to see a guy that can pull off the things that he can do.
Right.
So in all of these movies, I think there's a lot of that people are like, yeah, this guy's actually doing it.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
It has a lot of that going for it as well.
Yeah. It's very impressive. Yeah.
You mentioned Willem Dafoe. He's really good here,
Right.
in the way they sort of play that around, and it ends up working out,
Right.
for John Wick.
Yeah.
The concept of the Continental Hotel is pretty fun.
Hmm.
It's interesting because I don't even know that the Continental Hotel, the whole thing about it feels a bit fictional, and yet the
Sure.
movie itself is very grounded and very real. So I find
Yeah.
that kind of an interesting thing. I don't
Yeah.
even know if they needed that, but I guess it gives a little more of a twist, if you will, right?
Right.
Compared to
Right.
just a straight, nose to the grindstone action.
Yeah, it has
Uh,
that kind of like, this is the underworld that exists in our world, but we just don't know
uh-huh.
about it. It's like
Right,
it's
right,
got that
right.
interesting thing to it that I like too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the part that you wouldn't expect from from a straightforward action movie. So
Yeah.
it is good to kind of offset the rest of it, I guess. In this in this first John Wick film, that guy, his name is Dean Winters.
Oh yeah.
He's like a henchman, and
Right.
he's the mayhem guy.
Yes.
And
And
I
he gets
actually
hit by a
like him.
car.
Yeah, I actually like him, too, as an actor, but
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to focus on him and take him seriously when all I can think about is saving 15% on car insurance.
Right. Right. Yeah, and
But
he does play a lot of comic relief,
true, that's
which I
true.
think they played in. They knew that, and so they're like,
Mhm.
let's have him kind of be like the comic relief guy
Sure.
throughout it, and so that to me it kind of works. But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is an enjoyable film. I put it, it's I guess it's not my least favorite and it's not my most favorite. I'll put it that way, of the
Okay.
three that I've seen so far. But yeah, I'm probably at 3 stars on it.
Okay.
And I've
Okay.
only seen it once. I do want to watch it again.
Yeah.
But it's an enjoyable action movie.
Yeah, I did like it better on rewatch.
Mm,
Rewatching it this time, and it was cool because I got to rewatch it with the commentary, which had both directors on
oh,
it, and they're giving
nice.
so many interesting little tidbits about how they made this, and
Nice.
yeah, it's really interesting. So I ended up at 4. I mean, I might have even had it at 4.5. A
Wow.
really, really big
That's
fan
really
of it,
high. Yeah.
and so
Mhm.
yeah, these are honestly they're some of my favorite action movies ever made.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that one ranks pretty high for me. So John Wick 2. Okay, we come to chapter 2, as they call it. I like it's like chapter, like it feels like a graphic novel. Like that's how you
Yeah.
read comics. Like here's the next chapter in this long running story.
Yeah, I like that.
So I like that, and it doesn't have a subtitle. The third one we'll talk about does have a subtitle. This one
Mhm.
doesn't. If I had to give it one, and I think the director wanted to give it one, but he wasn't allowed to for whatever reason. They wanted to keep it simple.
Oh.
It would probably be excommunicado,
Mm.
because that's kind of
Yeah.
what they're dealing with
That
here.
makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of theme of the movie is, it kind of goes deeper into this world of assassins, and he
Mhm.
meets many other new characters. We get Common in there, who, Common is a rapper, right? Who's kind of broken into the acting world a little bit.
Right.
And I've never seen him in a great role until I saw him in this. I really
Mm.
think, again, the directors are smart and the writers smart. They really know how to utilize actors properly. I feel like they had given him too much to do because, again, this is, I think, only the second or third movie he had made at this point. It would have probably, not worked. But I think, again, it's kind of minimalist in its what he has to do, and these movies overall, especially I think these first two, again, they kind of get more and more as they go along. They have bigger budgets and they can do more with the story and the world. But this one,
Right.
I think, it does everything a good sequel does. Look, it kind of expands on the world more, goes a little deeper into the characters. gives us bigger, crazier action sequences, even better stunt choreography, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I really like this second one a lot. It's pretty much on par with the first one for me.
Gotcha.
I really like, something we didn't talk about is the costumes. They're, it's pretty much the real world. So there's nothing too crazy about the costumes, but I just think they're really well done. And this one introduces the bulletproof suit, right? Which I think was a great idea to be able to have, John Wick do these even crazier stunts and fight even more, enemies, that kind of thing. He kind of needed some kind of advantage. And I think that was a really smart way of doing that. And I was listening to an interview with the director, and they actually do put, I don't know if it's actual, I don't think it's actual Kevlar, but there's some kind of material they put in his jacket that kind of reflects light as Kevlar would. So
Mm,
it has that interesting look to it if you're really paying attention. Just looks a little bit different from like a regular suit
mm,
you would wear. So
gotcha.
just little details like that I like. Again, I got to listen to this one with the commentary. This one was with the director, and Keanu Reeves was on this commentary. So a
Oh,
little bit different perspective, and it was a lot of
yeah.
fun. Feel like you're watching it with them in the room with
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
a lot of fun. But yeah, again, better world building. You kind of get to, it's more of a globe trotting adventure. We get to go to other parts of the world, which is a lot of fun to see. We see, again, as they start coming after them, these assassins, it's like there's one on every corner, like everywhere he's going, there's a new assassin coming after him to take him out. So I just
Mhm.
like that, again, upping the ante, and doing a great job with all that stuff. This one has another good villain, I thought, that the guy, Santiago, I think is his name. He's another kind of one of these guys you just can't wait for him to get shot in the head. You just really don't like him, especially with what he's having John Wick go and do, which is another very effective scene with him and the sister. She's a great actress that did a great job with her, small role there. A very memorable scene. This one also introduces Lawrence Fishburne to the world, so we get our Morpheus Neo reunion, which was a lot of fun, and he's having a lot of fun in this role. You can tell. So yeah, they just do another great job with it. Great cliffhanger ending, waiting to, sets up the third movie really well. And, the opening action sequence with the car, all that stuff is really great. Adding in, the car foo, I guess you could call it. You have gun foo, now you have car foo. Um, so yeah, again, just a big fan of chapter two. I think it does everything it should do, everything a good sequel should do. And it's, yeah, I would say probably on par with the first one, at least 4.5 stars for me. So what are your thoughts on chapter two?
Wow. Yeah. And part two is chapter two is probably my least favorite of the three, but I liked it about the same as part one. So I
Okay.
did like the film.
Yeah.
It's more of the same. In some ways it's bigger and better.
Right.
It is compelling to see, Wick, he's a guy, he'd like to just kind of live his life, but he keeps
Right.
being pulled back in, one of those kind of
Right.
things.
Exactly.
And so you can appreciate that. It's funny because I think at one point, like the cement's literally not dry from putting away his sort of
Yes.
cache of weapons, and then he
Right.
just gets pulled right back in.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the
where did I
thing.
bury? Oh yeah, I better go get
Right.
those weapons.
Yeah. That's the thing about this movie. It's like, the first one, he loses the dog, and he's just
Yeah,
lost his wife, and then he loses the dog. And this movie, he's like, his house is gone. Like, he's got nothing now. And
yeah.
so that's what draws him back in. And so they
Mhm.
found a compelling reason for him to go back into this
Mhm.
world.
Yeah, and I want to point out I did like kind of the callback to John Wick one of him taking out people with a pencil. That was pretty
Yes.
cool.
Right.
One of the things throughout this series that's great is that he uses items around him sometimes. It's not just guns,
Yep.
and anytime they do that, I love that kind of stuff where
Me
he just
too.
uses regular household items. Because
Yes.
we all do in that situation, right? We grab
Sure.
stuff
Right.
like that to defend ourselves with. I didn't love the bulletproof suit thing because I just kind of felt like they seem to rely on it too much. Like at
Hmm.
certain points he's literally pulling it up and using it as a shield. And I
Right.
thought, yeah, you can, but you could just use that all the time and just skate. I don't know. I just
Right.
felt like that might work once or twice, but you're gonna take some heat at some point
Right.
to
Right.
pay for that. And I think he does get shot, once or twice, maybe
Right.
every movie,
Yeah.
something like that. But
Yeah.
so I didn't love the reliance on that so much.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a continuation of the same thing. Again, it's a bit brutal to watch that many people just systematically executed like that. That's kind of
Right.
tough to watch,
Yeah.
and that's
It's a
why
lot.
I don't
Yeah.
love it as much as you do.
Sure.
But I'm probably right there at 3 stars again in this one. So
Okay.
I still liked it a lot.
Great, great, cool. All right, great. Well, let's move on to chapter three, Parabellum, which, as we learn in the movie, Ian McShane's character Winston says this. It means prepare for war, and so this one is really the start of the war with the High Table, right? The High Table being this like kind of the overseers of this assassin world, this
Yeah.
assassin's guild, or whatever you want to call it. So again, they're upping the ante. You know, it's like, how much bigger can we get, right? It's like, just okay, so it's another globe-trotting adventure. We get to go to the desert now, different locations. I love these different locations,
Me
especially
too.
the desert. I think that's like the most cinematic location you can go to. That's why, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark, my favorite movie, they're in the desert a lot, and it just looks great on screen. So all that stuff is
Right.
great. Of course, we're introducing new characters like Angelica Houston shows up as kind of like a mother figure to John Wick, and so we get a
Hmm.
lot back of backstory in this movie that the first two didn't really give us. There's a lot
Yeah.
of inferred things we're not really sure about. This one basically tells us where John Wick came from, what his upbringing was like, which is really interesting. It tells us his real name is revealed. I mean, all kinds of really interesting things. But what's great about these movies, you know, the director, he said, uh, my worst enemy is exposition. I hate exposition. So he's like, if you
Interesting.
know, we do exposition, it has to be in a unique way. It has to be visual.
Yeah.
You know, he's it's one thing that's great about these movies. They're very visual in their storytelling. So I think they do that very well here. Again, it's just so well shot. The lighting and everything, it looks great. Use of color, you know, I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of action movies are kind of gray and dull a lot of
Uh-huh.
times, and this one has a lot of great, different, interesting lighting going on. So that's continued here. We get Halle Berry introduced to the series. I thought her character was great. They utilized her well again.
Hmm.
The action sequence with her and the dogs is just crazy and so much fun to watch. We have the Adjudicator. She's a new character here that's introduced, kind of the antagonist of the film, kind of comes in and shakes things up. Um, I really like the opening of this movie. So the last movie, this picks up right where it left off. He's running through New York. The hit is out on him. All the assassins are coming after him in New York City. And he ends up in this antique weapons shop and he gets to just let loose with these guys that are coming after him, all these knives and hatchets. And,
Yeah.
you know, he uses a six
Exactly.
shooter and all
It's
kinds
great.
of crazy stuff. It's just a great sequence that I really, really enjoy. It really starts the movie off with a bang. You know, it's like you're in it with him, you're trying to survive. And as it goes on, again, we get more of the lore. We get the Elder, you know, who's a character that's introduced here. And so, you know, Lawrence Fishburne comes back as the Bowery King. So we get that whole element of it as well. So just again, they continue to build out the world. They build the character. They, you know, put him in some really difficult situations. You know, they challenge him in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, this one actually is my favorite of the first three. Again, this is the first one I saw in theater too. That might have something to do with it. But yeah, I just feel like this one is so much fun to watch. It's so engaging and interesting. And Keanu Reeves again pulls off another great performance. So yeah, bigger and better in every way is how I describe chapter three. So what are your thoughts on it?
This was a step up big
Oh,
time.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the character John Wick really hits his stride character wise and action wise. Like I didn't feel like it had exactly the same feel as the first two,
Yeah,
in a good way.
right.
And you know, there's long, you know, there's better character moments. Some of the action scenes are even longer and they're just
Hmm.
so inventive, you know, and that's what I
Right.
love. There's terrific martial arts.
Yeah.
But it's it's the, you know, the use of props and, you know, where it's funny, you know, that's a
Right.
great comic relief without saying a word, you know what I mean?
Yes. Right.
And I really love the look of this. The neon coloring is
Yep.
great. Yeah, I like the locales. I mean, a lot of stuff you said, but
Yeah.
I had to
Right.
mention like those attack dogs are just, they need
Man.
their own movie or something.
Yeah. Right. I know.
Attack of the John Wick attack dogs or something.
Right.
I don't know. They were fantastic. You
Right.
know, it was just a step up. And this one's probably 4 stars for me
Okay. Great.
and very enjoyable. Yeah, we're getting into a much different territory now for me.
Yeah, I agree. This one's like basically four and a half, maybe even five.
Wow.
It's probably one of my favorite action movies ever.
Uh-huh.
Every time I watch it, I'm just
Wow.
stunned by it. So yeah, really enjoyed this one as well. There's that motorcycle sequence on the bridge and just so many great things. So yeah, again, ups the ante, goes kind of crazy, you know, with the action here and again, just great storytelling. So that brings us to chapter four, which I know you haven't seen yet. I got to see it opening night. Went with my brother and checked it out. There's a reaction on the channel right now. Um, I think the first thing I said is that it was just mind blowing. You know, it's one of these movies that just again, I don't see how they're going to do better with this than in chapter 5, because it's like it's just crazy what they're doing, you know. And
Mm,
the again, the lighting stands out so much. The way they're, you know, angling the camera, and these certain shots that they hold on are just stunning to look at.
mhm.
And again, this is another globetrotting adventure. We get to go to Paris. It's heavily featured here. Berlin is another city we go to. It is 6 months later after chapter 3. You know, he gets pretty badly beat up at the end of chapter 3. It's like, how's he going to recover from this? So they
Yeah,
did jump 6 months. So he's recovered now,
he's good now.
and he's good to go for more action. Of course, you know, Ian McShane is back, has an even bigger role. Lance
Mm,
Reddick does a great job as well. And I guess Ballerina would have been his final performance before he passed away, but this is one of
yeah.
his last movies before he unfortunately passed away recently. Um, we get to go to Japan in here as well. So I don't want to give away too much. I'm going to stay spoiler
Yeah.
free, but the new cast members. So we got Hiroyuki Sanada, who's a guy I really like. You'll notice him in tons of movies. Bullet Train, he's in that. He's in The Wolverine. He's in all kinds of
Oh.
great movies. Great action star from Japan. Rina Sawayama, she's actually a pop star in Japan,
Oh.
I think she's actually British.
Oh.
But she just knocks it out of the park with her role
Mm,
in this movie. New character. Donnie Yen is introduced. I think a lot of people have been waiting for Donnie Yen because he's known as one of the best action stars alive today. He did all the Ip Man movies, and he was in Rogue One, and he's done a lot of great stuff. He plays a blind assassin here named Kane, and just such a great character. He's got like his own little arc, his own little storyline going on that's really interesting and
mm.
engaging. Clancy Brown joins the cast as well in a really good role. Um, Shamir Anderson is a younger actor. I didn't really hadn't seen him in anything before, but he plays a really interesting new character as well. And then I know you're going to be excited about this. Bill Skarsgård is our villain
Oh.
this time.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah,
Was he awesome?
he's awesome. He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's so good in every scene. He's got multiple scenes throughout the whole
Mm,
movie, and just really effective. Great. He's putting on a French
I
accent,
bet.
which I hadn't heard him
Oh, yeah.
do. But he does a great job with his accent, and just yeah, really great character. Every
Mm,
time he's on screen, his charisma is just incredible. So yeah, all the cast members do a great job. Great themes they're dealing with. I mean, kind of continuing the themes of redemption, of
yeah.
perseverance. There's kind of new themes introduced of family and brotherhood are kind of a more of a core idea here. Consequences, of your actions and that kind of thing. So it's kind of continuing all of it in a really interesting way. Has again just wonderful action. I mean, action that again, it's like, how do you keep upping yourself after part 3? It's like you've done so much, so many interesting things, but they keep finding new ways
That's
to put him
great.
in new situations
Yeah.
that are different, and give him weapons that are different. And
Yeah.
just the way it's all set up and done is just really incredible. So
Wow.
I've got to say, chapter 4 is my favorite of all of them. I'm
Wow.
giving it the full 5 stars. I would say one of the best action movies ever made. Just
Wow. I can't wait to
really,
see it, man.
yeah. I think you're really going to dig it, and
Yeah.
the way they end it is interesting too. And there is a post credit scene as well. So if you go to
Oh,
see it in
okay.
theaters or you watch it later, make sure you stick around after the credits. Really
None of
interesting
the others
scene
have
there.
post-credit scenes, right?
None of the others do this first time.
And I wanted
So
to ask you this
yeah.
too. I think don't they get
Mhm.
longer, like the run times, every one gets longer as they go?
They
Is that
do,
true?
yeah. I wanted to actually, I think I jotted that down when I was talking about the box office. I meant to mention that. Yeah. So the first film is only 100 minutes long, hour and 40 minutes, right?
Mhm.
So pretty tight, short little movie. Second one's a little longer, 2 hours, 2 minutes. Third one is 2 hours, 11 minutes. And
Mhm.
this one is 2 hours and 49 minutes. So we're closing on that 3 hour mark. But I'll tell you, it did not feel like it. It felt like it zoomed by so quickly
Wow. Yeah.
in that theater. I felt
That's
like it's over. What? I thought this was a 3 hour movie. And it's like, yeah, it's been 3 hours. So very impressive that they can make it that long of a runtime feel like it just zooms by. Again, because they're I think it just really has a lot to do with the character and Keanu, and I think that Keanu, um, he's actually got a lot in common with this character. I don't know if you know much about his life, but he's dealt with loss a
No.
lot in his life
Oh,
personally. And I
really?
think he's got this personal connection with John Wick that really
Yeah.
shows. And each movie, I feel like it gets deeper and deeper as they reveal more of the character and as he kind of goes on this journey more. So yeah,
That's part of what
really,
makes it so interesting because
yeah,
in real life, he can shoot all these weapons. He can do all
right,
this stuff. And then on top
exactly,
of that, yeah, character wise, I mean, he's basically playing a version of himself,
yeah,
but not in a
exactly,
bad way where it's like the same thing over and over.
right,
But I wanted to say I feel like it's good to see. You feel like the studio is rewarding movies that are good
yeah,
by further putting effort and time. And every minute of
yeah,
runtime they add to this, they're either taking a risk or making an investment.
yeah,
And so
right.
it's really good to see when the movies themselves are good like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, check it out now if you haven't. John Wick Chapter 4 is in theaters. It's playing on IMAX screens. It's playing all over the place. So make sure you go out to the theater and check it out and let us know what you thought in the comments below. But without further ado, let's jump into our top 5 Keanu Reeves movies. Here we go. All right, folks, here it is, our top 5 Keanu Reeves movies. Going about picking this list, whenever we're talking about an actor, which we've done before with Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks and a couple other people, um, it's really about them for me. It's more about the performance than it is the movie. It's both, but I feel like when we're talking about best Keanu Reeves movie, it's about him, the role. Is he comfortable in the role? Does he feel like it fits him? Does he play the character well? So that's really what I'm honing in on when I'm talking about my favorite Keanu Reeves movies. Um, you know, but of course, other things come into consideration. Is it rewatchable? Is it memorable? Is it, groundbreaking in any way? Has he been in any of these movies that have like changed movies? So that kind of thing comes into it as well. But the main thing I'm looking at is Keanu and his performance. Is that kind of what you're thinking of too?
Mine might be a little different because
Okay.
there I did look at performance obviously weighs in quite a bit.
Hmm.
But I wanted to use some examples if I could. Like for instance, he's not he does a great job in the movie I Love You to Death. He's got a great little small part in
Mm,
that, but
okay.
he's not in it enough, so I didn't include
Right.
that. Then there's movies like um well, I was going to mention the Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Sure.
I feel like he was just kind of miscast in that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Right. I like
so
the movie though.
yeah, the movie's decent. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Gary Oldman. Wow.
Right.
And then we got a movie like The Devil's Advocate, which
Oh,
I'm not sure if it's on your list. It's a fairly enjoyable movie, but I mean, honestly, um, he does a terrific job with his role. I just don't love Keanu in that role necessarily. And the movie itself is just okay. I mean, it's entertaining. I can't say I like the movie. So there's
gotcha.
some like that are kind of tricky because if you want to just take bare performance, he does a lot, in that movie. I mean, he shows that he's a really great actor. He emotes probably more than any film I've seen. But
Hmm.
I just didn't really want to include that because I got to get behind the film too, I
I
guess.
gotcha. Sure, sure. No, yeah,
Yeah.
there should be a balance. And I haven't seen that movie. It was on my watch list. I didn't get to
Mm.
watch it this week, but yeah, there has to be that balance of yeah, I like the movie and the performance. If you can have both, that's what's going to make your top 5. So yeah, I think I agree with what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
I'll mention a couple. You mentioned, Dracula, which was an honorable mention I had because yeah, I just think the movie's really good, but he's not
Hmm.
perfectly cast. And I don't think he does a terrible job. I just don't think it. I think another actor could have done it better.
I,
Basically, is
I
what I would
I
say.
I think he's either miscast or I think that the director didn't put him in the right direction.
Yeah,
He was pretty early on in his career.
true,
But
true.
he's proven he can act, so it's
Yes,
not that. But I get what you're
right.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Another one I had to mention is DC League of Super Pets. He plays a really
Oh,
small. He's Batman. He's one of
that's
the
awesome.
superheroes in there. So yeah, that was a fun role. Again, it's like maybe 2 or 3 scenes, so it's not a ton, but he did a good job as Batman. I thought it was a fun one. Another one I like on Netflix, a rom-com called Always Be My Maybe
Mm.
with Ali Wong and I think it's Randall Park. They do a great job in that, but he plays himself or a version of himself.
Oh, really?
It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
But again, he's not throughout the whole movie. He's kind of it's I wouldn't necessarily call it a cameo because he's in pretty decent amount of screen time, but he's not a main character. So I wanted him to be the main character, obviously the top five. But yeah, that one's fun. It's worth checking out. Of course, I've got to mention Toy Story. He's in the fourth Toy Story movie as a character called Duke Kaboom. He is Canada's greatest stuntman. So I don't know if you know, Keanu is Canadian. And so they made
Right.
this character basically just for him.
That's funny.
And
I
so
didn't even know it was him.
it's a lot of fun. It's a great role. He does a great job in it. Really funny. Last one I'll mention, which was very close to making it in my list. I had to rewatch a few of these to determine. I kind of had my top three locked in, but then there were a few fighting for those bottom two spots. So rewatched a few, and I ended up had to put in the honorable mentions Constantine.
That's one of my honorable mentions too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I really like it. I really like him in the role. It's very much an anti-hero role, which is kind of unique for him. Although I guess
Right.
John Wick has a little bit of that going on, but this he's kind of unlikable a lot of the movie.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
he's really cool. He's got, great look about him, a great kind of swagger. He plays off of Rachel Weisz really well in that
Mhm.
film, and it's a fun movie. I really enjoy watching it. They're supposed to be making a sequel. Recently, it was
Right.
discussed. So hopefully that still happens with all the shakeup at DC. But yeah, so I had to mention that one. It's just kind of a fun like horror fantasy comic book
Mhm.
movie with kind of a fascinating world and
Mhm.
just a lot of fun. Shia LaBeouf's a lot of fun in it as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I like that movie.
Yeah. And that was one of mine because he does give a good performance here, and it is a different role. He's not playing the nice guy or the
Right.
laid back guy or whatnot.
Yeah,
And I gotta say too, Rachel Weisz, she's a flawless American accent.
I know.
There's just terrific actors like Christian Bale, where sometimes I'm like,
Sure.
yeah, you could definitely hear his Welsh there and that kind
Right.
of thing. But
Right.
no, she is legit. She's,
Yeah.
she should be the gold standard for making sure you do a good American accent.
I agree
I had to say
completely.
that.
Yeah, she's
Yeah, but that
fantastic.
that is a good one. I had
Yeah.
one other honorable mention,
Yeah.
and that's The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Okay.
I
See, I
know you're
wanted
not.
to rewatch this. I didn't
Oh,
get to. Yeah.
okay.
I've
Yeah, I
seen
know
it
you're not a
once.
huge fan of it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I like it. It's not a great movie, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably at like 3 stars on it. But
Okay.
Keanu gives a pretty complex performance because he's often understated and he is
Yeah.
in this role.
Right.
But what his character is actually extremely frightening. And
Yeah.
so there's just some complexities that he hasn't really done, I think, in other roles. And
Right.
on top of that, I like the movie fairly well. So
Cool.
I had to mention that one as well.
Yeah. Good. Good. I'm glad you did. All right. Well, we're ready to jump into our top five. So, Bert, why don't you kick us off at number five? What do you got?
Well, number five actually is my John Wick 3. So
Oh, okay. Great. Great.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I already talked about that one, but yeah,
Right.
so far the best of the three that I've seen, and can't wait for four. But I think he's just the physicality that he brings to that role, and what we see it from his character, and it's kind of like Keanu. I mean, we talked about the comparisons to himself, and this is where he's at in his life, and I feel like he really carries a movie like this and can pull it off. You know, this is the culmination of all of these action movies and character
Yes.
movies that he's done in the past.
Definitely. I feel the exact same way. Yeah. The third one is just incredible. Yeah. I still remember seeing it in theaters and just being blown away by it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great one for sure. Good pick. All right. Well, on to my number five, which is Speed. So Speed is just solid an action movie as Hollywood makes. I feel like it's just kind of hits everything you want it to as far as a cool action movie, a great concept, first of all. It's been described as Die Hard on a bus. I feel like it's more than that. I mean, it's kind of that, but it's like it's different. I feel like it's not exactly, it doesn't exactly match up. The whole idea of this bomb on this bus that can't go below 50 miles an hour is so great. It just builds tension throughout the whole movie. I mean, uh, what's interesting about this movie is, the starts off with that great elevator bomb scene. So you kind
Yeah.
of get two
Yeah.
movies in one almost. Like,
Yeah.
what if there was a bomb on an elevator? Well, here's that movie. And they do that in like the first
Yep.
15, 20 minutes, and it's really good. And we get
Hmm.
introduced to all our characters, Keanu Reeves, and he plays really well off Jeff Daniels, who I think is great here as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
We get introduced to Dennis Hopper, our villain. I got to watch this last night with the commentary. So there's actually two
Hmm.
commentaries on this Blu-ray. One is by director John DeBont, who, you know, is cinematographer for Die Hard and Hunt for
Right.
Red October, and then he became a director. But I listened to the screenwriter, Graham Yost, and producer Mark Gordon, who have made like 5 or 6 different movies together over the years. They recorded the commentary in 2001, so
Hmm.
years after the film was released, and it's a really lively commentary. You can tell they know each other really well. They're kind of like making fun of each other a lot throughout the commentary,
I love
very
that. Yeah.
sarcastic, making fun of the
Yeah.
movie even in certain scenes. They're like, why did we do this? It's really fun. It's fun to listen to. So if you have it, I highly recommend it. But just a great commentary that, they really went into what all the behind the scenes stuff. I mean, the producer was on set every day pretty much, and the writer, wrote, as most screenplays go through several drafts. It's like the first draft was totally different. It was, this kind of thing. So it was interesting to get all that behind the scenes info. Originally, one of the most interesting things I thought was that Harry, Jeff Daniels' character, was going to end up being the villain, revealed at the end. After that opening scene, he kind of like retires, and then he becomes this,
Interesting.
guy. So interesting to see how it kind of changes throughout the movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's got this great ticking clock, right? We like the ticking clock in action movies. It's like there's something that's going to happen. We got to stop it. Again, builds the tension, unrelenting pacing. I mean, from the moment he gets
Yeah.
the phone call on the payphone. They used to have payphones,
Hmm.
right, in the
Hmm.
90s. So he gets the call, and then it's like just nonstop. I mean, this movie
Yeah.
does not stop
Yep.
until the end. I feel like the third act kind of is unnecessary. The whole subway
Hmm.
thing.
Sure.
I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
once the bus blows up, it's over. And the
Yeah.
screenwriter felt much the same way. They're like, yeah, but we had the 20 minutes so we could get the villain. He's like, yeah, whatever. But it's not a bad ending. I don't think it's bad. I
Right.
just feel like it's
Right.
unnecessary.
Gotcha.
So it feels a little tacked on. But great
Yeah.
movie. Look, they were talking about the model work that went into this,
Hmm.
blending with CG. Early days of CG here. There's minimal
Right.
use of
Very early.
replaces
Yeah.
here. But then all the stuff they did in camera, I mean, a lot of it is just on
Hmm.
set. Stuff that they did. The bus jump was a real bus jump. It's kind of crazy, the stuff that they did for this movie. But yeah, excellent action movie. Keanu is great in it. It's a great in this role. He has a lot of moments of vulnerability where we see him kind of break down and like he doesn't know if he's going to be able to save the day or not. His
Yep.
chemistry with Sandra Bullock is great. I mean, they're all their stuff together is wonderful. She's great in that role, and they play so well off of each other. So yeah, just a solid an action movie as you can get. I think I'm at 4 stars on it. It's just really effective action movie.
And my number four is Speed.
Oh, okay, perfect,
Or
great,
you were at five. My
right,
four is
yep,
Speed.
perfect, great.
Yeah, yeah. In this, I let me say first, like my top four are all 4.5 stars or higher.
Oh, okay, cool,
So they could almost be interchangeable. I've seen Speed so many times
right,
that I think some of the newness is wore off. I mean, I saw it.
right.
I've talked about this before. I saw it twice in the theater. I was set to see it a third time,
Oh,
drove like
right,
45 minutes away, and they'd canceled the showtime.
right. That's right. I remember you telling
Uh,
me that.
but yeah, this is just a perfect action movie,
Yeah.
yeah, from the DP of Die Hard. So
Mm-hmm.
he's probably
Yep.
like, I got my own little movie going. Uh give me a few years.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, Reeves and Bullock are great. You mentioned the chemistry.
Mhm.
Bullock was definitely probably kind of a risk at that time.
Oh yeah.
His star was rising.
Yeah, she hadn't done very much at that point.
Yeah, I'd never seen her in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dennis Hopper, I mean, he just like chews through his scenes.
Yes.
He's wonderful here.
He is.
I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
there's quite a bit of humor. The plot
Mhm.
is very compelling. It's got some great music. That
Yeah.
pounding score. It's one of
Right.
those though that it is the same theme repeated and with variations. So it's not
True.
one that has multiple themes. So I don't put it like in
Right.
my top 10 film scores, but I really love the theme that is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I had to mention, I know you're not a fan of the 1998 Godzilla. The theme was done by Mark Mancina. The film
Right.
Godzilla, the soundtrack is the score is David Arnold, so different guy,
Hmm.
but it's almost the exact same notes of the theme. And
Oh
that's one
wow.
thing that always bothered me about Godzilla. I didn't mention it because there was already enough ammunition against it, but I had to bring this up,
Right.
put it out there in the universe. Um, yeah, and yeah, there's some great camera work here.
Yeah.
Um, the film keeps you guessing. The sort of cat and mouse type of thing.
Right.
Um, I have to talk about the jump. the bus jump.
Right.
To me, the movie is slightly knocked because of the very common problem that people have with the bus jump, because
Right.
it's a flat surface and the bus like takes off like this.
Right.
And in the theater, I didn't mind so much because it's such an intense and great movie. But I will say, why didn't they just make that a surface that goes upward like a
Well, I
ramp?
think they mentioned that, oh, there might be an incline because of the way they took the road
Right.
apart.
They
They
say there
mention it, but you
might
don't
be.
see it.
You
Yeah.
don't see it. So I think that's all it would have taken. And then this
Yeah.
would be like a 5-star film for me. So I have my own critique of that. So that ending that you mentioned, it is a bit unnecessary. I mean, they probably could have shortened it a little bit maybe or something. But I wanted to say it's interesting because it's got kind of the same ending as the movie Narrow Margin with Gene Hackman. I don't know if you
I
ever
haven't
saw
seen
that.
that. No.
That movie, okay, so spoiler, but that movie ends kind of the same way, where they're on top of
Mm.
a train
Okay.
and they sort of hold the person's head up, and then it gets lopped off.
Right.
And in Narrow Margin, Gene Hackman makes a quip too. He says before he dies, he says, you know what I like about you, you're tall. And then the guy said, whereas in Speed,
Right.
after it happens,
Right.
Keanu says, yeah, but I'm taller. And
Right.
that's his sort of
Right.
his line. So
Exactly.
I found that an interesting comparison of those two movies.
That is interesting.
The last thing I'll mention about Speed is just those stunts, the practical stunts that they do. I rewatched it this week, and I don't know if I noticed before how dangerous those stunts are, because um I don't see green screen, like when he's on that flat thing going underneath the bus,
Right.
like, and it's not, they're not doing it at 20 miles an hour and making you think that they're doing it at
Right.
50. Like, they're
Yeah.
moving fast,
Yeah.
and it could be green screen. Maybe they cleaned up the lines with really early CGI, but they
Mm.
weren't really doing that in 94.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know. All I'm saying is that looked really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what adds the element to it, because
Yes.
I mean, you feel like it's really risky. Like, you really feel like they're doing these stunts. But
Definitely.
yeah, I love Speed.
Yeah.
I want to pick it up on 4K at some point here, but
Yeah.
that's my number four.
Excellent. Great choice. Great choice. All right, on to my number four. It is Point Break.
Okay.
Point Break is my
All
number
right.
four. So, yeah, huge fan of Point Break. This movie has so much personality, I feel like. That's why I really like it. Because look, I mean, it's sort of a ridiculous plot if you think about it. It's like surfing bank robbers, like an FBI agent infiltrates a ring of surfing bank robbers that wear president masks to rob. I mean, it's kind of like silly, right? But they really make it real, and they make you lean
Hmm.
into it. You really like these characters. They're really interesting. This may be my favorite Patrick Swayze role he's ever played, and he's kind of
Wow.
a villain, almost, like, really. I mean,
Right.
if you think about it,
Right.
like, but you get it. Like, you kind of get where he's coming from. You kind of
Hmm.
like him. He's very likable. The character he's playing, Bodhi. So yeah, I mean, Keanu does great here as well. Johnny Utah, one of the great movie names of all time. Football player turned FBI agent. I mean, it's just a great kind of, again, it's very ridiculous, but it works. It works because I think, the director Catherine Bigelow, who's gone on to direct Oscar-winning movies like The Hurt Locker, and she did K-19, The Widowmaker, which I'm a big fan of
Mm.
as well. So great director. She just knew the tone to strike here, and that's really what the movie's all about. I feel like is tone, because it's
Hmm.
it's very it's lighter. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
heavy action movie. There's like real violence here, but it has this kind of lighter tone. I mean, whenever you have Gary Busey in there, it's just going to be tons of fun, and he's just so much fun. Utah, give me two. Just so many great moments here that are just classic, iconic, quotable lines of dialogue. Not just those actors. Lori Petty, I think, is great in this as well. Kind of a
Mm.
very unique, atypical kind of love interest. I think she does a great job. All the bank robbery scenes are really well shot and edited. The surfing scenes look really cool too. So all of it's just really well done technically. It's a solid script. It's kind of just, again, it's got another one of these action movies that has everything you could want in a fun action movies. It's very of its time, but I feel like movies like this, like or like Back to the Future, that's very much an 80s movie. They're kind of
Yeah.
timeless in a way because they're so
Yeah.
of their time.
Sure.
And I feel the same way about Point Break. This came out year before I was born, so I didn't catch it till much later in life. But I've always enjoyed it. Every time I've watched it, I've had a blast watching it. So it's kind of infectious. It's got this like lust for life energy about it. It's kind of living on the edge. It's all about freedom and the way you live your life and that kind of thing. So I just really enjoy it. I enjoy Johnny Utah's character arc. I think is really interesting, where he ends up at the end of the movie and all that stuff. So yeah, just a lot of fun. A lot of fun with Point Break. It's one I've watched a number of times and always get a kick out of it. So yeah, this is another probably 4-star movie for me.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to rewatch this. That's a good
Okay.
pick though. Yeah.
Okay.
I liked it back in the day, but I
Yeah.
pretty much remember nothing about it. But it's a few of the pieces that you mentioned, I'm like, oh
Right.
yeah, that's right. So I'll have to go back and find that one again and rewatch it.
Yeah, definitely worth a rewatch for sure.
Gotcha.
All
Okay.
right, on to your number 3.
Yeah. For 3, I've got The Lake House.
Oh, see, I still haven't seen this.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously it's a repairing of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock.
Right.
And it's one of those time loop movies. I won't get
Right.
into a whole lot of detail about it then,
Mhm.
since you haven't seen it. But I mean, obviously, I'd strongly recommend it.
Yeah.
But they kind of have this built-in connection because so many
Mhm.
people saw Speed,
Right.
that it's interesting. I don't think this gives anything away to say that they don't really share a scene for probably
Okay.
at least 45 minutes
Oh,
in,
wow.
and instead they it's unique. They almost share intertangled voiceovers, if you will.
Oh,
You have to kind of
interesting.
see it to
Yeah.
understand.
Uh-huh.
But because we have the two of them together in mind from Speed,
Mm.
it works. Like I don't know if that would
Hmm.
have worked if they were you know a pairing of a Hollywood
Yeah.
couple in a movie
Right.
that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
But so it works right off the bat.
Hmm.
And um yeah, so I just love how they sort of connect these two time periods. There's some really great shots of Chicago here.
Mm.
There's some great music. The score and some needle drops are really good here.
Mm.
We actually see Keanu cry in this movie,
Oh.
over I'll just say the death of someone close to him.
Mm.
The movie could use a tad bit more comedy. This is really a romance film. It's not a
Right.
rom-com,
Right.
like you might think it would be.
Yeah. It's a rom
But it's
drom.
right, but that's fine. That's fine,
Yeah, sure.
but yeah, this is one I revisit here and
Mm.
there. I just
Okay.
really enjoy. I love time travel
Yeah.
stuff. If it's done
Right.
well, I just love that stuff,
Yeah.
and they do it really great here. The script is actually really clever. Like
Mm.
if you watch it, you have to kind of pay attention,
Okay.
because they'll show thing. And again, I'm doing it spoiler free. They'll
Sure.
show something, and then you'll realize like 5 minutes later, oh, that's where that thing came in. And
Oh,
so
okay.
if you're kind of half watching it, you'll miss some of that fun
Yeah.
stuff. So the script
Right.
is
Right.
really sharp.
Hmm.
So I want to mention
Okay.
that too. But yeah, I really love this film. I'm at 4.5 stars on the Lake House.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely seek that one out as get one on the list that I just didn't get to watch. So yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out. Awesome. All right. On to my number 3. It is the classic, the one that made him a star. It is Bill and Ted's Excellent
I wondered if this
Adventure.
would come up. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill and Ted. Like
Okay.
I just have a blast with this movie. It is again time travel movie, right?
Yeah.
But it's done in such a kind of silly way. It's just an all out comedy. The time traveling phone booth. It's like it's great. It's just so fun. These characters are so endearing. There's some of these
Sure.
movie characters that I
Sure.
just really like hanging out with these guys. The writers of this, Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, it's loosely based on them, their own kind of
Really?
friendship, lifelong
Okay.
friendship, and they wrote the movie. And Stephen Herrick directed it. He went on to direct other movies that I like Critters, Mighty Ducks, Three Musketeers. He's done some pretty fun movies. But this is my favorite of all of his movies. It's just again a kind of silly idea. Two kind of dumb teenagers that have to complete this history report because they're going to end up saving the world one day. George Carlin comes back in time and, has them go and collect all these people from history. It's just so much fun to see, the different time eras. Because I don't know what the budget is on this thing. I should have looked it up. I wouldn't imagine it's very big.
Probably not.
But
Yeah.
they really do show you like different time eras and you feel
Yeah.
like you're there, and they get the
Yeah.
historical figure and bring them to the present. And the whole, I really like, the whole movie because you have the Bill and Ted story. Then you have the subplot with Napoleon, which I feel like not a lot of people talk about, but he's like Ted's little brother has to watch Napoleon, and he ends up taking to Waterloo, the water park, and he's like, it's just all this silly stuff. He goes
That's
bowling and
right.
like, I mean, it's just all this ridiculous stuff that you have
Yeah.
Napoleon doing, that this evil
Yeah.
tyrant doing all this silly stuff. So it's just fun. It's ridiculous. It's not meant to be taken seriously at all, but it has a lot of heart to it as well. Again, you really like these guys as people. As a guitar player, I'm a big fan of the Wild Stallions. So that's an element of it that I enjoy. Just unique production design. When we go to the future, we see that glimpse of the future. That was interesting. The costumes there are interesting to look at. So there's a lot about the movie that I enjoyed, but it really ultimately just comes down to I have fun watching it. It's just a fun movie. It has just hilarious dialogue, and it's short. It's like 90 minutes long. It's easy to watch. One of those that I've just revisited time and time again. Whenever I'm always in the mood for this movie. It's one of those movies I can watch anytime. Yeah, just I have tons of fun with it. So I've seen it many times, and I had to make the
Yeah.
list. And it ended up
Sure.
number three because again, it's one of the more rewatchable ones for me.
Sure. Yeah.
That I've enjoyed. So yeah, it's at least 4 stars. It's great.
It came out when I was pretty young and I loved it when it
Right.
came out. I haven't
Okay.
seen it in years. I didn't
Okay.
have time to go back and rewatch, but that's a good
Right.
pick. I'm glad it is in
Yeah.
there. It may be the movie that is the reason why we like Keanu so much, because he started from there and
Right.
it ended up way over here with
Right.
John Wick and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's
We
incredible to
love to see
see,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that he can do both. Like,
Right.
and there's Bill and Ted sequels, which a lot of people don't like as much as the first one. I like both of the sequels actually a lot.
Mm.
And I still think he plays the role really well. And Face the Music, the latest one, I think he got right back into it and it felt like Ted again. So yeah, it's interesting that he can do both. He's known as action guy now, but
Hmm.
that's not where he started. And I think it's cool to see that he can do kind of multiple things. It shows that he is a really good actor. So
Yeah, he's
um,
underrated as a
yeah,
dramatic actor. He really is.
right,
I
right.
watched. I started to watch that Face the Music one, and I didn't go back
Mm,
and rewatch the other ones.
yeah,
And for some reason, I hated it. I couldn't
yeah,
stand it. I turned it
yeah.
off about halfway through, but maybe it was the mood
Right.
I was in. I don't know.
Sure, sure. No, look, it's not for everyone. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first one. I wouldn't say either the sequels are as good, but
Gotcha,
I get a kick out of them. Like I like a lot of the
gotcha.
stuff in the second one, and the third one. I thought the core of the story was interesting and good. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a big fan. But yeah, the first one is easily the best. All right, on to your number two.
Man, I can't wait to talk about this film.
Okay.
I watched this for the first time. My
Oh,
number two is A Walk in the Clouds.
oh, haven't even heard of this.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, this was a mid 90s film. It's a period drama romance film.
hmm.
And
Okay.
he plays obviously a younger guy, just came home from the war.
Hmm.
He had married abruptly right before the war started.
Hmm.
And then now he's home, but now he's got to immediately go out and get a job and this kind of thing. And he comes across this woman. It's interesting because she's like a Mexican American woman, and he kind of helps her out, and she convinces him. She also is on her way home, and she convinces him to go with her to her home where all of her family are. It's in Napa Valley in California,
Hmm.
and pretend to be her husband because she's afraid her father will be angry with her, and he is. But let me tell you, and the funny thing is, we've seen this kind of premise where, oh, you pretend to be my boyfriend or something.
Right.
Like we've seen that a lot, but this is way back in like 94 or 93, I think. I want to say
Okay.
95, 95, I think.
Hmm.
And so this might have been one of the first ones to do it. I mean, obviously, the before that there were other movies. In fact, this one is based on a 1940s film.
Oh,
I think it
okay.
was a foreign film. So I
Hmm.
mean, this is probably a concept that's been done every decade numerous
Right.
times,
Right.
but it is kind of a fun concept.
Yeah.
And wow, I was just this film. I mean, um, the scenes in Napa Valley are just absolutely gorgeous. Like the color palette that they chose for this, it's dreamy,
Right.
and the culture, the Mexican culture that they show
Hmm.
in this area is just so engaging, and the family members are just they pull him in, and he
Yeah.
doesn't really want to stay there for very long, but you know what I
Right.
mean. It's one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's got terrific music, and Keanu plays a character. He's actually an orphan his whole life, so
Hmm.
even though he doesn't plan to stay with his family for more than a few minutes, he finds that they're like accepting him as family. So now he's got this
Hmm.
family that wants him, and he's like, what am I doing? It's just
Right.
a wonderful drama, and it instantly, I'll tell you, instantly became one of the best dramas I've seen. I started looking for the Blu-ray or high def. It's not on high def yet, but there is a
Mm,
Blu-ray, but you can't even really find it for a reasonable price because it is
mm,
kind of a more obscure title.
yeah.
But I remember this when it came out in the theaters, but I never heard anybody talk about it or anything.
Mm,
I looked up the budget. I think they filmed it for like 20 million and it made like 80 million dollars.
mm,
So
wow.
but it's one I definitely recommend seeking out. It
Yeah.
really blew me away. It's a beautiful looking film, and it's just a great drama. And Keanu gives one of his best performances for sure.
Wow. Wow. That's great. I love hearing about new movies I've never heard of, and that's definitely one. So yeah, I'll definitely be seeking that out. Yeah, it sounds like it's a unique entry in his filmography as well. So
Yeah, yeah, different
yeah,
part for him.
right, right, right. Interesting. Great. Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. Very good. Well, that was your number two. On to my number two. It is the one, the only, The Matrix.
That's my number
The
one.
Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. So yeah, Matrix. Look, people have talked about this movie for years. It's so influential on modern cinema because it was so groundbreaking. It was so different from anything that had come before it. Of course, when it comes to the effects, obviously that's kind of the first thing that most people think about. But also with the story, I mean, the story is very unique. It kind of draws on, the Wachowskis were very inspired by anime. They were big fans of Japanese animation, and so things like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, those kinds of movies and series inspired them heavily, as well as all kinds of different mythologies and philosophies. And it's a very kind of heady movie in many ways. I mean, the first one's
Oh yeah.
probably the most simple of the four that they ended up totally making,
True.
but
Yeah.
it's still got a lot going on. But
Yeah.
it's just perfectly displayed on screen. It's all visual. It's all even with the dialogue scenes, they have this visual element to them that are really interesting. When Morpheus kind of explains what the world really is and that kind of
Hmm.
thing is great. Just an awesome movie. Of course, bullet time was the big kind of thing that everyone was blown away by, had never seen before. So that's a huge element of what makes it stand out and makes it memorable. But yeah, just great characters. It's really it is kind of an ensemble cast, but it's definitely focused on Neo and his kind of journey. Carrie-Anne Moss is wonderful as Trinity. Might be my favorite character in the whole series. She's just great, great
Hmm.
character. Of course, Lawrence Fishburne. This kind of put him on the map in a big way. Does a great job as that kind of mentor role of Morpheus. It's of course Hugo Weaving as the villain is wonderful as well. So just a great kind of ensemble cast. Keanu, I feel like he gets to play another kind of unique role in that, Thomas Anderson is very much an everyman. He's an office
Yeah.
worker, just a regular guy. And then he's thrown into this crazy situation and ends up being, the one, right? And so it's like this big journey he goes on. And it's kind of just like a perfect, this one movie. If there had been no sequels, it would have been fine, right? Like it was just this great one story about this
Right.
one guy, who kind of defies the odds in so many ways. So yeah, just a great action film, a great sci-fi film. It's got so many different
Hmm.
elements to it. A great, character drama. There's a lot of kind of
Yeah.
dramatic sequences that,
Yeah.
really are emotional and heavy.
Right.
It's also got, great levity to it. I mean, it's just kind of got, again, everything you could want in a movie is kind of here. And, it broke new ground in so many ways. That was, so, again, we continue to feel its influences today in everything that we see. Even John Wick, right? I mean, the directors of John Wick got their start on this movie, and they talk
Yep.
all the time about how without the Matrix, there would be no John Wick and that kind of thing.
Mm.
So, just super effective, super enjoyable, super entertaining. Again, one of my favorite movies ever. It's a 5-star film. It's excellent in every way. So those are some of my thoughts. What are your thoughts on The Matrix?
Yeah, it's yeah, obviously my number one on this list, but it's a five
Yeah,
star film for me, and I think it's in my top 10 of all time. I'd have to
yeah,
check my list, but
yeah.
there was a while, for quite a few years, it was in my top five.
Mm,
I saw it in the theater. I can remember. I'll comment on some things that aren't story related because everybody kind of knows, or
sure.
can explore that on their own.
Yeah.
But I can remember watching the trailer, and some buddies and I were like, "Wow, that's some aggressive kind of stunts that they're trying to pull off." And so
Right.
I went into this thinking this probably is going to be terrible,
Right.
because
Right. Yeah.
there's so many of those that promise something on the trailer, but
Yes.
then no, this one absolutely delivered, and then some,
Mm,
because there was a lot that wasn't on the trailer that made it
mm,
in there,
yeah.
and so in more recent watchings, what I've noticed though is the way the Wachowski shot it, because there are so many kind of dizzying aerial shots and just
Mm,
creative setups that,
yeah.
like, okay, so like for one example is when Neo gets hauled into the by the police and he's sitting in the interrogation room, and the camera is looking at a monitor of Neo sitting in the little room where he's going to be interrogated,
Right.
and it's kind of zooming in on that, and then it sort of seamlessly gets absorbed into the whole screen.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is like, wow,
Right.
like it's just amazing. I mean, the Wachowskis, they hadn't made a big film, so they were under
Mm,
pressure
yeah.
to produce, and had probably a much bigger budget from their prior film.
Sure.
And so I'm always impressed when a filmmaker then can still say, well, I'm still going to put a lot of effort into this. I don't want to
Yeah.
just go buy the book and make sure I can meet my budget and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
they clearly take these liberties that it would be a pretty solid movie without a lot of that stuff, but it's
Yeah.
the artistry that really is noticeable when you're paying attention to it. And
Yeah.
some of these aerial camera shots, like above stairs and stuff, that just add so much extra to the film.
Yeah, there is a lot of attention to detail. I've been listening to, I've been John Wick on the mind, and so I've been listening to a lot of interviews with the director, and he would talk about how
Yeah.
they would they were so detail oriented. They shot everything. Like usually second unit goes and shoots all the action scenes, and but it's like no, the Wachowski shot every scene in that movie, even like little insert shots of like, hands grabbing things or
Mhm.
whatever. People would be like, oh, it's just a quick insert shot. And they would be like, no, let's take a moment. Let's really think about how we want to shoot this. And it's like, it's just a 2 second insert shot. What do you, but they're very focused and detailed. And that shows in the
Yeah.
movie. It really comes across.
Usually there's not time to really take that, because you're
Yeah.
usually on that you're on that timeline,
Right.
and sometimes you get behind a day, and then
Yeah.
that it's more money, and the studios, man, I mean, all those behind the scenes stuff if you
Sure.
watched it. And
Right.
so and a lot of people probably don't know, like there's a second unit that you'll see on the credits, and they're
Hmm.
off usually shooting, though, like you're talking about the insert.
Yep.
So
Right.
like you might see the setup, like I don't know, if you're filming New York City and the
Yeah.
second unit comes in and does all this extra footage, and then you cut to the actual
Yeah.
part with the actors, but
Right.
the actor wasn't in those setup shots, nor was probably the
Yeah.
director
Right.
there
Right.
shooting it most of the time. So that's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the script here is just ridiculous, right? I mean, the writing in this film is next level. The
Mhm.
film does borrow a little bit from the Terminator series. I mean, there's some borrowing going on here,
Yeah.
but it's just a tremendous film. Moss was a rising star here, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of physicality by all the actors, which was unexpected. Again,
Yeah.
this was the first film. I mean, you see Speed and you think, oh yeah, he did pretty good, jumping off the bus or that kind of stuff.
Right.
But this here, I mean, you're full on doing martial arts, and to
Yeah.
see, I remember seeing those scenes for the first time and going, uh, like when Keanu says, "I know kung fu," and Lawrence
Right.
Fishburne's character says, "Show me." You're like,
Right.
are they actually gonna like do kung fu next? And
Right.
they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So that was
Right.
just really wonderful to see. And so I want to mention one more thing about it, and that's some of these scenes are kind of disturbing. Like when he's being
Yeah.
reborn and that kind of thing.
Right.
I always like remembering these things from the theater, but the scene where he gets kind of flushed out and he's being reborn and all that, and there's all this gook and stuff like that. There was a guy a couple rows behind us in the theater. He actually said, it was kind of quiet in a moment. And he goes, "I think I'm going to throw up."
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, I mean, that is kind of gross, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not your average film, but
Right. Right.
yeah, I mean, the visuals are flawless, action like I'd
Mm.
never seen before.
Yep.
Love the bullet time stuff.
Yeah.
And there's hours and hours of behind the scenes stuff on these films. But
Yeah.
yeah, love the Matrix, and pretty much almost everything that the sequels brought to, but Matrix is a 5-star film. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, excellent movie. Really glad we got to talk about it. Maybe one day we'll do a full Matrix in review and cover the sequels too. But yeah, this first one, it just stands above. It's a cut above most
Yeah,
movies, and
right,
yeah, it's definitely one of Keanu's best. It kind of put him, rocket propelled him to kind of superstardom. I feel like after
right, right.
Point Break and Speed, kind of like we're building up his clout, but yeah, this one took it to another level. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
another original concept that the directors
exactly.
had to probably take to the studio,
Yep.
and it's so ambitious that thank goodness Warner Brothers said, okay, yeah, we'll try this. They probably
Yeah.
set the budget
Right.
less than they wanted, but somehow
Right.
they pulled it off. It's crazy.
Yeah, they did. It is amazing. All right. Well, that is it for Bert's list. Now, my final entry is my number one, John Wick, Chapter 4. This
Wow,
is my
wow.
favorite Keanu Reeves movie ever. It is incredible.
Yeah,
It's right there with The Matrix. I mean, it could go back and forth, but as of now, I mean, maybe I'm still riding
it's
high on
new.
after
Yeah, I mean,
having
it's
seen
I
it in
get it.
theaters.
Yeah,
But
sure.
man, this is one I'm definitely going to revisit multiple times.
Hmm.
Again, Chad Stahelski returning to direct, Derek Kolstad's writing. They've been on the project franchise since the first one. And it shows, I think when you have, a lot of franchises, like they'll change out directors multiple times or whatever. When you have the same team, the same core team throughout, it really helps.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
becomes a shorthand on set. They
right.
trust each other more.
Hmm.
They're willing to take more risks, I feel like. And this movie certainly
Hmm.
does that. I mean, again, camera angles, things we haven't seen, I've never seen in
Hmm.
an action movie,
Wow.
are in this film, and it's inspiring because it's like think about how many movies have been made, millions of movies, just action movies,
Yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah.
fact that they're still coming up with ideas that are new and fresh and feel exciting and interesting are just is just so cool.
Especially
So
for that genre, because I feel like action's that one that always gets forgotten about when it comes to plot and character.
yes, I agree. I agree. But yeah, and that's the thing they talk about a lot. Again, I've been watching a lot of interviews on YouTube with the team, and they're always coming at it from a character perspective. It's always about what's the story we're telling, where's the character at, why would he do this, why wouldn't he do that? They're
Yeah,
constantly
yeah.
questioning that kind of thing, and they know at this point Keanu Reeves knows the character so well. I
Hmm.
feel like he's just so comfortable in the role. It's just this one. I find this one to be the most emotionally effective and engaging of the all of them. Not just
Hmm.
because of Wick, but because of the characters he's surrounded by and the way they're connected to him and what they have going on in their own lives. And it's just really interesting and really great. There's a lot of characters in this one, more than the other three. And so it needed that runtime. I think that's part of the reason it is longer because there are more characters. The way the plot is intertwining between all of them is really interesting. So yeah, just super great. Keanu Reeves, he's so, again, we talked about it, how he has a personal connection to this character. It feels very authentic, you know, and so that's
Hmm.
why I think it works so well. It's just incredible, again, with the action, the gun fu, they're taking that to another level. They're with all the martial arts and all the stunts and all the car chases. And I mean, it's just, there's so much. They kind of just throw it all in there. I feel like in this one, I really don't know where if they do another one, where they're going to go, because it just feels like they've done it all. But again, they keep coming up with new ways. You mentioned something, I think we were talking last week about, action as art and, the martial arts. I mean, it's in the word, right?
Hmm.
So it's very
Absolutely.
much,
Yeah.
there is an art to it. There's an art for it. It's not just a technical thing that you
Hmm.
do. And again, they're coming at it from a character and story perspective. So that really makes it
Yeah.
that much more effective. And so I feel like this
Right.
kind of, they learned so much on the Matrix that they're able to build on that. And of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
the Matrix is like a superhuman thing where each movie kind of gets crazier and bigger, and the
Yeah.
characters can do things people can't do. Whereas this
Right.
one's keeping it grounded, but they
Hmm.
still want to go bigger and better each time.
Right.
And so I think
Right.
they've done a good job of maintaining that. It's not, Matrix has a kind of almost balletic quality to
Exactly.
a lot of the action, whereas this
Absolutely.
is very dirty and gritty and kind
Hmm.
of messy. It feels messy. It feels like characters mess up sometimes, like Wick won't
Right.
do something right and he has to kind of fix it or whatever. So,
Yeah.
stuff like that I think
Yeah.
makes it more relatable, again, more real.
Absolutely.
Has this kind of synthesis of, they're obviously inspired by Eastern action styles, John
Hmm.
Woo and all that kind of big,
Hmm.
crazy Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type action. But they're
That's why
mixing
these
that.
do so well overseas too. These
Right,
films. Yeah.
exactly. And they mix that though with the Western style of very,
Mhm.
grounded and gritty and
Yeah.
hand-to-hand stuff. And
Right. Right.
it's kind of a mix of, it has, there's elements of Westerns in there. There's elements of all kinds of different things that they're playing with. So just really interesting. I love, something we didn't mention. We were talking about all the Wick movies is we see him reload his weapons, which we basically never see in any other action movie. It's just like unlimited ammo.
And I'd
And
rather
this
have the reloading. I mean, that's just me. I
definitely,
mean,
it informs character. It make again,
yeah,
it
yeah.
brings that sense of urgency and
Hmm.
realism, and
Yep.
to me it adds so much. I wish more movies would do it. Hopefully they start doing it
Exactly.
more because it is great, a great part of the movie. He has to kind of pause for a second, reload, and it's just great to watch. So yeah, it's really again, the movies have a simplicity to them. Again, I'll mention the kind of elegance of the way it's shot, the lighting. I mean, there's a sequence here. They do kind of another nightclub sequence. It's an even crazier nightclub, the way it's set up and everything. But the lighting is just fantastic. Some of the framing of the shots, just like a painting I want to put on my wall, that kind of thing. So
Nice. Nice.
really, really well done. Great production design. Has more of the kind of, these movies have a kind of dark humor to them, and this one definitely has that as well. Um, Great cast again. Just really, really effective. And the way they keep building out the world and keep revealing these things about the characters and the world they exist in is really interesting. So yeah, I mean, it draws on a lot of, there's Christian history, there's Russian folk tales, samurai lore is a big part of this one. It actually goes to Japan, and there's the Greek and Roman epics are kind of at the core there. I've been again doing a lot of research on John Wick, and there's all kinds of videos out there about what they draw on and for story
Oh,
wise and themes and things like that they're exploring. So just great. To me, this is one of those movies like The Matrix that kind of ups the ante with the action and kind of sets a new precedent for action
hmm,
filmmaking. It's like after
fascinating.
this, there's no excuse. Like you guys need to step it up. Other filmmakers out
Yeah.
there, it's like it's time to take it to the next level because these guys have just done something amazing that is really, really incredible. So huge fan
Great.
of the franchise. This is my favorite one. And so yeah, had to end up at number one.
Great.
All right, folks. Well, that is it for us on this episode 41 of the Real World Podcast. Thank you, Bert, for joining me.
Yeah, man, it was righteous.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Give us your list of your top 5 Keanu Reeves movies in the comments below. We would appreciate that. We would also appreciate you liking the video, hitting subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to 200 subscribers. Be sure you hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos next week. The podcast is all about our top 5 favorite dragon movies. Dungeons and Dragons, the new film is coming to theaters next week, so we'll be talking all about that with our special guest Josh. That should be a lot of fun. So be sure you return there. Check out the channel. We've got all kinds of playlists. I just reviewed my Blu-ray collection of John Wick films. I've got an instant reaction out of theaters to the new John Wick movie as well, if you want to check that out. All kinds of new videos are going to be coming up soon. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, share this on social media as well. Our links are in the description below. Bert and I are both on Letterboxd, so you can follow us there as well. And again, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time right here on The Real World.